At number 5, we're going to start with Aaron Brooks. Now, before there was ever a Drew Brees, there was a quarterback by the name of Aaron Brooks. He anchored that quarterback position for the Saints from 2001 to 2005 and early to 2006 before Drew Brees got there. He was a very underrated man in that decade of the 2000s for the Saints. The Saints really didn't have too much success before Brees got there in 06, but he was a man that kept the ship up afloat. Aaron Brooks had 4 seasons in which he threw for 3,000 yards passing, which was a big deal in that era, and also led the Saints to their first playoff win ever in franchise history in the year 2000. Aaron Brooks at number 5. At number 4, we have one of the greatest receivers in Saints history, Marcus Colston. Practically one of the more underrated players in NFL history, especially at the wide receiver position. This man was nothing but work. Did not talk not one time in his career. It's kind of like Marvin Harrison, the Hall of Fame wide receiver for the Colts. All work, no talk, nothing but production. Probably the best receiver in the history of the National Football League not to make a Pro Bowl. But just because he didn't make a Pro Bowl doesn't mean that he wasn't a good receiver. In fact, he was damn near great. The man was Drew Brees' security blanket for 10 years. You know, he came to the NFL his first year, 2006, and from right then and there, he showed what a tremendous asset he was. This guy, in a 3-year span from 2006 to 2009, caught 33 touchdown passes, in which he had 3 seasons. He had 1,000 yards receiving, and combined from 2006 to 2009, the guy had 100 yards receiving in the 2000s as it came to a close. So Marcus Colston at 4. Coming in at number 3, the man called McAllister, one of the best running backs in the 2000s decade, was kind of overshadowed by LT and a couple other guys, Marshall Faulk and etc., Sean Alexander. This guy, Deuce McAllister, was, if not one of the best Saints in that decade. He played 8 seasons with the Saints from 2001 to 2009. His final year, of course, he won the Super Bowl against the Colts in Super Bowl 44. Really culminating a great career as a Saint, considering the fact what the Saints were when he first got to that team. 4 different years he rushed for 1,000 yards, and then in his whole career with the Saints, he had 49 total touchdowns. His best year came in 2003, in which he had 1,600 rushing yards, along with 516 yards receiving in one season. Just remarkable numbers for a man who really put on for the Saints and really was there pre and post Katrina, and ultimately ended his career with the Saints with the ultimate biggest prize the Saints could have ever gotten in their history, which was the Super Bowl victory in Super Bowl 44. Deuce McAllister, you know, was really the guy before Reggie Bush. But even when Reggie Bush was there, Deuce did not let people know that he wasn't fit. Deuce was a consummate, consistent playmaker for the Saints, and he's one of the more exciting players to watch, especially if he was a Saints fan, you know, back in that time. But a very, very productive guy, you know, put this team on his back and really held down the backfield for an entire decade with the Saints. So I got my man Deuce McAllister at number 3. Coming in at number 2 is one of my favorite players growing up in the whole entire NFL, number 87, Joe Horn. Now, of course, when you hear the name of Joe Horn, you think of one iconic thing he did in his career. But as for a guy like me, I knew this man to be a productive, pre-Marcus Colston type playmaker for the Saints. He was one of the best, if not top 3 or 4 best receivers in the early 2000s. The guy went to 4 Pro Bowls with the Saints. He got there in 2000 after the Saints picked him up from free agency. He played from 2000 to 2000 and I believe 6 or 7, and went to 4 Pro Bowls, like I said, from 2000, 2001, 2002, and then again in 2004. He had 4 different seasons in which he put up 1,000 yards receiving, and and his whole career with the Saints, he totaled 51 total touchdown receptions. The guy was fun to watch. Also, he was a great playmaker, and he really gave defenses a run for their money when it came time to play. Unbelievable that Joe Horn put the city on his back just like Deuce McAllister did. And again, he's one of those pre-Hurricane Katrina guys that was there before, and he came there afterwards and really put the Saints to a place in which, you know, they didn't have prior to him coming to New Orleans. But again, everybody knows Joe Horn for one particular thing he did in a game against the Giants in 2003. And to close out his tribute, I'm going to play that clip. Enjoy.
With time, rifles, touchdown, Saints. Joe Horn, and he pulls up the protective coating. There's a new one. He got his own phone. He hit his phone.
And the number one Saint in the decade of the 2000s is Mr. Drew Brees himself. Now, Drew Brees, a man who I knew played for the then San Diego Chargers. You know, he was a great player for the Chargers, and then that horrible injury happened to him. And undoubtedly, that's probably the best thing that ever happened to his football career, him getting injured in that final game against the Broncos in 2005. But anyway, let's talk about Drew Brees with the Saints. Drew Brees, on and off the field. On the field, this man picked up from where he left off in San Diego. He came to New Orleans, and it was a new era when he came down there to New Orleans. The Saints were never the same, and to this day, he still plays for that same very team. But remember, we're talking about the 2000s now. So we're talking around from 2006 to 2009. His best year came in 2008. The man had 5,000 passing yards in 2008. Led the league in both passing and passing touchdowns. But 34 touchdowns, unbelievable. First team All-Pro. Back in 2008, he led the league twice in passing during 2006 and 2009. You know, but to me, Drew Brees off the field impact is much more greater than what he did on the field. You expect what he does on the field, but what he brought to that city and that new energy that he brought to that town is undeniable. Him and Sean Payton and the rest of the guys on this list impacted that Saints franchise's history post Katrina. Katrina was a thing that damn near tore the city down and almost took away the Saints franchise away from New Orleans. And Drew Brees, and along with other great players, really not only brought the team back to New Orleans, but they made them into something that the Saints had never been before. And undoubtedly, the 2000s were the most successful stint of the Saints franchise's history. And there you go, Drew Brees at number one.